Hello everyone, this is Kantharaju NP, Assistant Professor, Ananya Institute of Commerce and Management. In this session, I am going to explain the comparative balance sheet technique. This technique is one of the managerial technique which is used to take the number of decisions in future course of action. In order to do comparative balance sheet, we want 2 years balance sheet data. 2 years balance sheet data are going to be analyzed according to the important elements like current assets, fixed assets, current liability, long-term liability and capital of the firm. That means these 5 heads are given clue to the management in order to what amount of changes which take place from the previous year to this year. That's why comparative balance sheet is going to be prepared in order to know the change in liabilities, assets and proprietor funds between the two balance sheet date. Then question is how we will be do that? This will be do that by analyzing and interpreting the balance sheet data. In order to analyze, again the balance sheet data are subdivided into 5 heads. Asset side we are going to be classified into 2. One is current asset and another one is fixed assets. Then when it turns to liability side, liabilities are classified into 3 heads. That is current liability, then long-term liability and capital of the firm. That means to say that comparative balance sheet we will be done by 5 different kinds. One is current assets, fixed assets, long-term liabilities, capital of the firm and current liabilities. Okay, see there is a pro forma which we indicating it. The first column represents particulars, then the next 4 columns represents the first, third and fourth column represents original data of the balance sheet which we have taken up in order to look how amount of changes which take place between the two balance sheet date. Then the last 2 columns which indicates increase or decrease in amount rupees as well as in percentage. So this we will be analyze the balance sheet in different 5 heads, that is current assets, fixed assets, in liability sides, current liabilities, long-term liabilities and capital reserves and surpluses. Okay, once we analyze like this by calculating the changes which take place between the two balance sheet, our job is not end with that. Further, we need to move and interpret the results which we have analyzed in comparative balance sheet. How we will be do in interpretation? In interpretation, we are going to be say that the results that affected to liquidity position or not. Of course, liquidity position we need to interpret it because of in order to do the liquidity position, we are going to take up into account the current assets and current liability. From comparing the current assets and current liability, what will come to know? Whether company has sufficient liquidity or not in order to meet the day-to-day operations. That means to say that whether company has working capital in order to meet their everyday transactions or not. This we will come to know by this position. That means liquidity position or short-term solvency position or working capital position. That means it can be done by comparing the current assets and current liability. Then next we move on to the second interpretation, long-term solvency position. In order to do this long-term solvency position, we will going to take up capital and long-term liabilities compared with the fixed assets. The capital and long-term liabilities which are the main sources in order to form the fund to the organization. That means to say that whatever we collected the funds from the equity shares, preference shares, by issuing of debentures, secured loan, unsecured loan or any other financial institution, by this way we are collecting the huge amount of capital to the organization. Whatever we collected the fund, whether these funds are used or invested in fixed assets or not, we need to check it. That's why we are going to compare the capital, long-term liabilities with the fixed assets in order to judge whether company has positive long-term solvency position or not. Then next we move on to the profitability position. The profitability position we will come to know that reserves and surplus. When compare the reserves and surplus, we can easily find the profitability position of the organization. How? The reserve, amount of reserve we kept for the future uncertainties, and the surplus amount which we retained in the organization, that will help us to find the profitability position of the organization. So that means to say that surplus means which is the retained amount after declaring the dividends and reserves. That itself says us the surplus amount compare with the previous to current year, that will give an idea how much of profitability position is increases from previous year to this year. By this way, we are going to be interpret the results of the organization by these three ways. Thank you.